Welcome to Quilling It, where authors spill the ink on writing, publishing, and promoting your book in today's market.
Hello and welcome back to Quilling It. I am Lindsay Franklin.
And I'm Paul Regner.
And today we are going to be talking about indie publishing versus traditional publishing. Now, Paul, you have done both of these routes. You
Yes.
have experience as a traditional author, and you also have experience as an indie author. So I would love to hear some of the things that you love most about being an indie author.
Right. Yes. I was kind of forced into it. I started traditional, like you said. I got a contract for a science fiction trilogy. And then I was working on this urban fantasy story that just kind of hit me out of nowhere. And so I was pitching it to my publisher at the time, and they were like, "Oh, this isn't quite what we're looking for. We thought you were going to write another science fiction book." And I'm like, "Yeah, that was my plan too, but inspiration struck, and here we are." So they said, "Well, we're not interested in that just yet." And again, I think I mentioned, like on a previous podcast, that those are the kind of things you can't take personal as an author, because there's a myriad of reasons why a publisher doesn't necessarily want to publish something. They may have a similar title. It may just not be something they're interested in at the moment. Maybe they will be in the future. But for me, it was kind of like, I knew I really liked the story and I wanted to get it out there. And I'd heard all about this whole indie publishing craze, because this was probably about 10 years. This was like, when was this? 2017, something around there. So indie publishing was already kind of like up and running and, gangbusters. And so I thought, like, okay, I want to look into this. And I really just started doing research and looking around, and found that I really took to it. I really enjoyed like learning all these, especially when it kind of came to there's different strategies for marketing your book and publishing your book, and how fast you could do it. You could just be so nimble, right? Like, I think at the time, if I was going to get published with the traditional route, I would have to plan for, like, okay, they decided to, sign the contract, and now I have to wait like a year or a year and a half for that title to come out. Does that sound like your experience?
Yes. And so at Enclave, it's at least a year typically from signing the contract to when the book is going to actually be available. Sometimes it's longer than that. And if you are at a larger house, it can even be 2 years.
Wow.
There is a very long lead up time.
See, those are the kind of time frames that drive like the indie writer crazy, right?
Right.
And I don't know if it has to do with being impatient or impulsive or what it is, but when my book is done, I always think like, well, okay, I want to publish it. I'm ready to go. At least, I want to edit it first, right? That's an important step. And that is part of the indie process too. I'm not saying indie is like you just sloppily write it and throw it up and just go, yeah. You still want to get professional editing. That's an important part of the process. But you can but here's another cool thing that I will say about the indie route. And I think we can all agree, kind of like, indie writers are a little bit cooler, right? Isn't that like a commonly accepted?
Wait a minute. I did not agree to this. We
Okay.
did not sign a contract that had that in the fine print. What is happening?
Well, okay. It's a personal opinion. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's all good. I like the nimbleness you have when you can kind of make the call, like, oh, you know what? I really like this editor, and I've got like this good connection. And oh, look at this company that does cover art. Oh, I love their stuff. I want to work with them. So just that ability to kind of freely pick and choose the collaborators that you're going to work with as you launch your project, it can be very, it sounds like a control freak kind of mentality, but
I was going to make that joke.
Oh, darn it. Sorry. I took your punchline. I apologize. But I don't know. So how do you look at that when you see that, like, oh, the ability to choose, because, as you're on the traditionally published route, how do you look at that? And like, as far as like positives and negatives as far as your experience?
Yeah, it's interesting because as an indie author, you are the publisher, right? You are your own publisher. And so you are making decisions as a publisher, who you're going to hire as your editor, what your cover is going to look like, who you're going to hire to do that work. And all of those decisions are decisions you are making essentially as the publisher. So when you're in a traditional publishing setup, there is an outside entity making
Hmm.
those decisions for you. And this varies a whole lot depending on what house you're with, how your contract is structured. So that is something else I should mention, is that I have experience at a kind of small mid-sized publisher, which is Enclave, and that's where all of my fiction is. But my nonfiction is actually at a big five imprint. So I've got that kind of larger house experience too as an author. And my contracts at these two different entities are really, really different. And so I have way more input at Enclave. And that's one of the reasons that I like to traditionally publish with Enclave, is because I do have a little bit more say. But at the end of the day, those decisions are publisher decisions because they're the ones investing the money. And so that is kind of a maybe a good way to highlight one of the benefits of traditional publishing, is that when I sign a contract, there is no money that is exchanged that I have to put out, right?
Hmm.
I'm getting paid. I get
Right.
paid by the publisher. That's how that works in traditional publishing. If you are ever signing a contract that you think is a traditional contract and you are being asked to pay money upfront, that is actually a vanity publisher, or
Hmm.
sometimes there are these kind of hybrid setups where there's like author services houses where it's essentially somebody trying to help you indie publish. We should have a whole episode just about those types of publishers
Yeah. Right.
to talk about that, because it's like a whole separate thing. But in true traditional publishing, there is not a single dollar that you are paying that goes toward the production of that book. Marketing is a whole separate thing, but so I don't have to pay for editing. I don't have to pay to hire the cover designer. My publisher takes care of that for me. But because they are the one with that financial investment, the cover needs to be what they think is going to reach my readers and what they think is going to sell and what they consider beautiful and professional and an industry quality cover and industry quality editing. So
Yeah.
it is much more of a partnership, and there is a give and take there. So you do have to be willing to work with a team and to sometimes be willing to not have the final say on certain things in your own book, which can be weird sometimes. That's a weird dynamic that you have to
For,
kind of get
for
used
us
to.
control freaks, right?
Yeah. Yes,
Well,
you
I
very
would,
super cool control freaks.
yeah. I think you've probably hit on the biggest benefit of the traditional publishing route, which is money, right? Now, I don't know if listeners have met a lot of writers out there, but typically we're broke. And because writing doesn't typically make a ton of money. It's, like most art, right? Let's the term, starving artist or struggling artist or whatever is, pretty commonplace, Of course, like people getting started are thinking like, oh, J.K. Rowling, she's a billionaire, or whoever, Michael Crichton, whoever comes, Stephen King, whoever, like the big people come to mind. You're like, yeah, that's a really tiny percentage of authors. Most people are just struggling, And if you're lucky enough to make it a full-time gig, that's like pretty awesome. But I wouldn't say that's typical. I would say that's kind of atypical. But it's a good goal. It's my goal. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm trying. Um, but yeah, so the money thing, that's pretty huge to be able to have. And I think especially for like a writer that's starting out, to have
Mhm.
a publisher come alongside and say, hey, you know what? Your stuff is good. It's not just in your head. You're not you're not living in your, it's not just your mom that thinks you're cool. We think you're cool too. And we're going to prove it by making an investment in your story. That's like this hugely validating thing.
Yes.
Like if you're starting out, there's so much doubt, right? You have so much doubt, like, oh, I haven't published anything. Is my writing any good? I don't know. My friends think I'm pretty cool, but I don't know. Like now I'm competing in the publishing industry with a ton of great writers out there, and I'm going to be compared and like critiqued. And, but so to have a publisher come in and say, no, your stuff is good. You're pro level and we want to put the money down, to publish you, that can be like this gigantic like confidence boost as an author.
Yes. I think
And
you
I know it
hit,
definitely was
yeah.
for me when I first started out and got that contract. I'm like, wow, okay, cool. I think I can do this.
Yes.
So that's where I think, I don't want to like cast aspersions on the traditionally published route because there is a lot of benefits to it.
Yes.
Having said that,
Uh-oh. Here we go. Buckle up,
I,
guys. Are we ready?
I, I
Indie
have
Man is here to comment on the
Indie
situation.
Man. That
Indie
should be a
Man.
superhero. Um, there is, just like I was saying before, that flexibility and the ability to really, almost have that confidence, like, hey, I know what I'm doing, and I've had this edited, and I'm confident in my work, and I think it's ready to go. That can be a great spot, to be in. And, it took me a while. Sometimes it takes a while to kind of build that confidence, but also on the marketing side, and ads is like a big part of it that maybe we can get into in a future episode. But when you can run ads and you can make this huge percentage, because we mentioned money, like, hey, this is great
Mhm.
that the traditional publisher will put up this huge investment to get you going. But once you start selling your books, your royalties are what, like typically 15%, maybe, at least for your initial print run. Does that sound pretty typical?
Yes. So I'm trying to think, like, how do I comment without commenting?
Oh, is
What
there a
can I say
secret
about
sauce
this?
in here in the
So
insider world,
there's,
that I don't
yeah.
know about?
Well, it's so weird. This is something that actually drives me a little bit crazy. I'm not going to lie, about traditional publishing and just sort of the industry, whatever that means. But there is a little bit of a code of silence sometimes about certain
Oh.
things. And that actually bothers me because I feel like that puts authors at a disadvantage when we don't even have a framework to understand what's normal or what would be what's expected in a traditional contract versus what might be predatory in a traditional contract. So that bothers me a little bit. That is, of course, an agent is a really great person to have on your team if you are going to enter into the traditional publishing space, because an agent is not only knows what is expected and standard in the industry, but is actually an expert in those things and an expert in publishing contract language. And so
Mhm.
I would not be in the traditional space without my agent by my side and able to navigate some of those things for me. So with that whole disclaimer about the code of silence and all of that, yes, the royalty percentages are typically quite low. You could see anywhere from, I mean, I've seen probably as low as like maybe 10% even,
Hmm.
for authors. And then it can be anywhere up to, 20, 25, depending on the format that we're talking about, because it'll usually be broken down by format. You get different percentages for physical format versus ebook and
Right.
audio and all the things. So it gets a little complicated, but suffice it to say, the percentages are much, 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 much lower than if you are indie publishing and you are acting as your own publisher.
Right.
You're getting a much bigger piece of the pie.
And sometimes in those trad contracts, it's tiered, right? Like, hey,
Mhm.
if you cross this amount of sales, like let's say if you sell 5,000 books, then you jump up to this second tier, which is now you are earning 20% or something like that. Is
Mhm.
that pretty standard too?
It is. And so you'll
Okay.
see those different kind of benchmarks. So you as the author, and that's the thing, I never want to make it sound like your publisher is your enemy, right? Because most of the time we have the same goal. I mean, I work on the back end of the publishing side of things too. So when I'm speaking about this, I'm speaking as an author who is traditionally published, but also as someone who is an actor at a publishing house, right? So we have the same goals as our authors. I want to sell as many of your books as I possibly can. That is my goal as the managing editor at Enclave. Like, and that is in line with what each of our authors wants for their own books as well. So I don't want to make it sound like it's this adversarial relationship. It can be, but it certainly doesn't have to be. It's more of a partnership in my mind.
Right.
But authors are definitely incentivized to hit some of those benchmarks because we will be making a slightly bigger piece of the pie in royalties and the reason publishers do that is because when you're hitting, whether it's 5,000 units, 10,000 units, whatever it is that they've tiered, the benchmarks at, it's because the author or the publisher, excuse me, is very confident at that point that they have recouped their investment in that particular title. They have made back the money that they invested in the production. So all of those overhead costs, paying people like me to work there, all of those things, costs have been recouped. And so it's like, yeah, you're out there, you're selling and hitting that target. You get a bigger piece of the pie now as the
Right.
authors. So,
And sometimes, which we didn't mention, sometimes, not always, but sometimes there's what they call an advance, right?
uh-huh,
So they'll give you an
correct.
advance certain sum of money depending on the author, right?
Mhm.
I'm sure the top tier authors that are well known, they get like huge advances. But
Huge.
when you are offered an advance, you sort of have to um, earn that money back through book sales. And then you don't really make anything more until you hit that mark and you've made it all back. Then you start making additional profits. That's pretty standard, right?
Correct. So if you, and it is also very common, something that has happened in the 15, 16 years since I got into publishing is these smaller kind of boutique traditional houses. So where they are truly traditional in the way that Enclave is. But they're small, they're independent, they're not connected to any of kind of the big publishing industry machine houses. And it is common for there to be either no advance or a very small advance. And that can seem like, well, gosh, okay, then is the author ever getting paid? And the benefit to a contract like that is that typically the royalty rates are going to be a little higher if you're getting absolutely no advance. The publisher might be offering you a little bit higher percentage, but it also means you're going to be earning that cut right away. So you don't have that advance to earn back. If you say sign a contract and get a $3,000 advance as the author, that's a modest. For a large house, that would be a very modest advance. Sometimes you see these deals that are being signed with these really like big houses, and sometimes it's not even a big name author yet. It's like a big debut, and it's like a seven-figure deal where the author
Whoa.
is getting seven-figure contract. That does happen. That always signals to me that it's not the norm. I should say that it is
Right.
not the norm. And these are the really large houses that are doing that. It signals to me that they are planning to invest a ton of money in marketing that book. And
Because they
so
just feel like, oh, this is going to be a hit.
they feel like it's going to be a hit. They feel like, it could be the next big whatever. And so that is the publisher taking a huge gamble. But you do
Right.
see that. You see those 6 and 7 figure deals happen. But let's use a much more reasonable number. We'll
Right.
say $3,000 for the advance, not the big 6 figure, 7 figure deal.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Because that's the
you
thing, you
have
hear
to,
about those, right? Those are the ones you
yes,
hear about, especially as a new author. And you're thinking, oh, sweet, I'm going to write this book, 6 figures, cha-ching. And that's like rare, right? To get
so
that.
rare,
Yeah.
so rare. Much more common, in kind of the 4 figure range. And then, like I said, if you're signing with a really tiny indie house, very common for there to be no advance at all. So,
Right.
um, and the contract might be just structured a little bit differently in that case. But so if you have, say, $3,000 as an advance, then and say your royalty percentage is like 15. 15% on your first X number of copies. So, however, the publisher is calculating that 15%, say you're making so many things depend on retail price and how they, the discount that the distributor is getting, and it's very complex. But
Right.
that's why we love our accountant at Enclave/Oasis, Charmaine, holding down the fort for us with all these numbers. But it's because it's very complicated. But let's just say you're making, as the author, $1 or $2 per book.
Right.
So you're having to sell then 3,000 units, right? 1,500, 3,000 units before you're going to earn out that $3,000 advance. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
it's a lot.
Sorry.
It's a lot. It's just there's a lot of pressure. So for those authors who are signing those 6-figure, 7-figure deals, you can imagine the number of units that they would have to move in order to earn out that advance and then start seeing royalties after that. It's a lot of units.
Right.
So
yeah.
there's pressure that comes with a contract that has an advance.
So that is the traditional publishing royalty framework. So now I will pull back the cover on the indie royalties, which are so much better. No, I'm just kidding. They are, but they're, again, you don't have anyone else in your corner to help you.
Right.
But so for me, for several books now, I've gone exclusive through Amazon for my publishing. And when you go exclusive, which also means you can be part of their, their KDP program and their Kindle Unlimited program, where people can join Kindle Unlimited, and for like a monthly fee, they can read as much as they want, right? It's almost like paying for like a streaming service or something, but for books. So since I'm published exclusively on Amazon for my ebooks, I'm making like 70% royalty. So just as a contrast, that at least on its face value seems like, whoa, I just jumped from 15% to 70%. That's so huge. Paperback's a little less. Paperback is 60%, but then you have to minus like printing costs and taxes and blah, blah, blah. So just to put that in perspective, when I sell a paperback that's like $15, I'll usually make like $5 and something cents. So yeah, still pretty great, but
it's good.
But yeah. But that 60% can sound misleading at first. Like, wait, I only got $5, but it costs a lot more to print. Like ebooks are just like, it doesn't cost you anything. So,
and I think that's why ebooks, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you will be the expert here, but I think ebooks are a really important piece of the indie publishing model. Like,
oh yeah.
It's huge. Whereas in traditional, and this is not our stance at Enclave, so I'm not speaking for Enclave, but I will sometimes see big 5 traditional houses out there where they have their ebooks priced like more than a paperback. And I'm going,
which is ridiculous, right?
Guys, what are you doing? And it's because the ebook format is not as big a deal to them. The print format is their bread and butter, and that's what they're focused on. So they'll have the ebook out there. They throw it, it's like $19.99 for your ebook, and I'm like, just choking on that price. But
right.
I'm imagining ebook only readers who love that, those authors will still pay it, I suppose. But
I
for
think
the most
that's their
part,
way of thumbing their nose at Amazon, because there's like, oh no, we're not going to play your game with your ebooks. We're going to trick it so people have to buy our paperbacks or our hardcover, whatever it is. And I think a lot of statistics that come out, like for book sales, are based purely on the paperback sales, on the hardcover, and they don't even like mention like ebook sales, because they know that's sort of pumping up the indie market, and they want to kind of, I guess, still pretend it doesn't exist. At least the big 5 don't.
Yeah, it's very different.
So anyways, so getting back to the royalties, yes. On Amazon, you can definitely make more, especially if you go exclusive. Now, I know there's a lot of people that are like, Amazon, blah, I want to publish wide to be available to everyone. But the other benefit of exclusivity on Amazon is the page reads on Kindle Unlimited, which I think those account for probably 50 to 60% of my royalties, believe it or not.
Wow. Wow.
Which sounds crazy, right? Because you make, I think, like a half a penny a page when people read, but it adds up. It's crazy how it adds up, you know?
Yeah.
So if you're getting like thousands and thousands of page reads rolling in, you know, that could be nice. Like, I think the other day I saw like there was 1,000 page reads, and I think it was like $5 or something like that, or, you know, around. I'm kind of spitballing here, but that's
Sure.
around the same. And that's not like atypical, you know, for a day. So um, it can be really cool because you have one product, but it's going out in these multiple ways of making money for it, right? Hey, someone bought
Right.
my ebook, or they bought it in paperback or hardcover, or they read through Kindle Unlimited or audiobook, which is like this new, this is another episode, but Amazon just started this virtual voice thing with,
Hmm.
which is AI audiobook. And now I just like pissed off a bunch of people because they're like, boo, AI, I hate you. You're siding with the robots. But so since I've been an exclusive author with them for a couple of years, I was offered to be part of their beta program for this.
Cool.
Now I've done an audiobook the typical way. You know, I hired a narrator, a professional narrator, and did that. And that was awesome, but it's expensive. It's like
Yeah.
really expensive. And the guy that I work with actually gave me a really good deal. But it's still a big investment. And I think I ended up maybe breaking even. And
Okay.
or at least by now I've broken even. Now it's like, you know, profit, but it took a while, and so that's kind of a risky thing, unless you're like this huge author that can guarantee like, oh yeah, people are going to go crazy with this audiobook. It can be a big investment. Like, I think typically it's like $1,000 minimum for producing an audiobook, and a lot of times it's more than that. It's a couple grand. So to have a service through Amazon where it's like, you can just kind of click a button and now we have AI reading your book, and it sounds pretty darn good, at least from my opinion. So again, don't hate me. I'm sorry, but I don't have the money to make all my books audiobooks, and I like to offer that, you know, to readers, that because there's a lot of people out there that only have the time to listen to audiobooks. Maybe they don't have the time to just sit down and read. So for me, it's just another way to offer my book. And I don't charge the typical audiobook price. I lower it. I think it's like $7 that I offer it for.
Oh, wow.
Um, but yeah, that's something you can do. And again, I know that's all controversial. I don't want to get into that, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, it's something I've done, and it's just a nice way of having another format to offer it in.
Yeah.
The same book, one book in like 5 different formats. So 5 different ways to earn money from the same story. That's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
It's
But
very
yeah, so
cool.
that's the royalty. So I think we've covered kind of the royalty portion of it. But now,
Yes.
what would you say about the ability and kind of the freedom that an indie author has for picking who they work with, like as far as like editors and cover designers and that kind of thing? How do you
Yeah.
view that from the traditional lens?
You know, it's another one of those things where it can definitely be a double-edged sword because, of course, as an indie, you're able to pick who you want, and there's freedom that comes with that, and that's
Right.
really cool to have that freedom. The other side of that is, what if you can't afford somebody who is kind of top tier or giving really, solid professional feedback, someone who's very experienced? Or
Hmm.
what if you are just starting out and you don't even know how to parse who is a good editor and who is not? When I was in the freelance editor space, I saw a whole wide range of, people offering services and sometimes charging a ton. And so you think, oh, that person's great because they charge an arm and a leg. Not always the case, that they
Ouch.
actually, yep, that they actually have the skills. So that can be really tricky. And I have seen indie authors where they have paid so much money and then you look at the finished product and I'm just like, I want to cry because I'm thinking, oh, they just, this needed better editing. And
Yeah.
it's sad because they did invest, they did pay for it, and they didn't get the product that they deserved to get, or the service that they deserved to get. So that can be a tricky thing where when you are working with a traditional publisher, if they are more established, if they are reputable, you can feel fairly confident that you are going to get industry standard quality edits because there's going to be somebody like me at the publisher who is vetting those editors and, looking at their qualifications and making sure that their work is quality. And if something comes back and it's not quality, because that does happen sometimes, you have some recourse. You, as the author, can go to your publisher and say, hey, I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable with how this copy edit went or how, the proofread went or whatever. And again, somebody like me at your publishing house is going to take care of that for you, is going to look into it, is going to have that work redone, is going to, or is going to explain to you why that edit was okay and soothe your fears on that. So there's, again, it's like having that team and having that support system in place is the trade-off, I feel, for losing a little bit of your freedom. And I think that is one of the big overarching benefits to, aside from not having to invest your dollars upfront in your book, the other really, really big benefit to traditional publishing for me is that you have a team. You have a team and a support system there that you are not responsible for selecting yourself and finding all of those people and making sure that they're affordable, that they're quality, all of those different things. Somebody else is doing that for you. And somebody who might even be more of an expert is in charge of vetting those professionals for you. And so having that safety net feels good.
Yes. Dang it. You're very convincing. I think if this was in a court, you'd be winning right now. But
I love indie publishing, by the way, you guys. I have to say, I think that Paul and I both are supportive of all routes, whatever like makes
of
sense
course.
for that author. And I ultimately, my hope is to be a hybrid author. So I am absolutely not against indie. I feel like I need to say that.
I think what she's trying to say is secretly she knows indie is way cooler, and one day she hopes to be as cool as the indie authors out there. I will say so. So you made editing. That's probably a really strong case because if you pick the wrong editor, like you mentioned vanity presses before,
Mhm.
and a friend of mine showed me like that his friend had just published a book, but he went through like this vanity press place
Mm.
that's just said, oh yeah, we'll do everything for you, just like pay us 10 grand and we'll make it all happen, like we'll make your dream come true kind of thing. And I'm like, 10 grand, like that's insane. And then I got to see this book and it was so sad because it had supposedly gone through rounds of editing. I found like typos all over the
Mm.
place and the sentence structure was just like all weird. And man, I felt so bad for this guy, but he'd already like invested the money. So what are you
Already
going to
done
say at
it.
that point? So
Oh.
yeah, it's definitely author beware of the
Mhm.
vanity press route. I would say like if you are going to take a path, just go strictly indie or strictly traditional. And like you
Mm.
said, don't pay money up front. You shouldn't have to pay any money up front if a publisher says like, hey, you're great, work with us, but you got to pay us some money first. Like,
Right.
that's your red flag
Don't
to
do it.
like
And it's
get out.
because it's the worst of both worlds, right? Because
Hmm.
we've been talking this whole episode about pros and cons of each.
Right.
But when you sign up with a vanity publisher, it is the worst of indie and the worst of trad because you get you're paying a ton of money. You get a really tiny royalty percentage a lot of the time. Like the contracts read like a regular traditional publishing contract, and yet you're the one who fronted all the money,
Right.
and then the product isn't even good half the time
Right.
or more
Yep.
than half the time. And so you don't have the control. You're paying up front like you would for an indie title. I mean, for 10 grand, you could go out if you knew where to find them and you
Oh, and you
know
could just
what.
do a stellar launch. Yeah.
Yes, you could hire great freelancers on your own for that. So if you have that 10 grand to invest, you could do indie really like top
Oh,
tier
oh my
freelancers
goodness.
all
Yeah.
across the board for that.
And I
So
didn't
yeah.
even mention this guy's book cover. It was hideous. It was like so
Oh,
sad. I'm like, oh, all
it
that money,
hurts
you
my
could have like
heart.
gone to the best illustrator. So I want to quickly, as time is ticking, I want to get in some good points for the indie because I feel like I'm on the ropes here a little bit, so I have to fight back.
Indie is great. We love indie.
That's just you're now. See, you're just digging it in. You're like, no, you're doing fine. Don't patronize me. Um, so I'm gonna. This is a strong point, I think, that I'm going to make here. Advertising. When it comes to advertising, so if you are making a small percentage, now one of the things I love is Amazon ads. I love to run Amazon ads. But the really important thing about Amazon ads is how much you are going to bid per click, because you usually do the cost per click. So you put an ad up there and then you set, a cost, like let's just say 35 cents a click. Now, if I'm making, say, $4 on my book, on my ebook, around, or three something, let's say, I think that's more typical. If I have it priced at $4.99, I'll make like probably $3 or three something. So if I'm trying to crunch the numbers, and this is where all like the accountants can geek out, but if I'm doing 35 cents a click, right, then I can really get into like, oh, how much can I run this ad and get a sale or get page reads? Again, that's another piece of that puzzle, because you can earn, if I'm running ads, they don't have to necessarily buy it. If they're Kindle Unlimited, they could just start reading, and I can make money because maybe they saw the ad and they said, oh, what's this book? That looks cool. I'm going to go use some of my free reading time on that because I've already paid for it. So that can be huge because you have a much larger margin to run more ads and get more attention and get more visibility on your book. And the more clicks and the more purchases and the more page reads, the more your book lifts up in the rankings on Amazon. And all of a sudden you're on page 1 or you're on the bestseller list. And it's like, oh, dang, now it's snowballing. Now, if you're traditional, that's a lot harder because the profit margin is way smaller, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I think I'm guessing probably a lot of traditionally published authors don't run ads because of that, because there's just not, it's very difficult to be profitable there. Because in the indie side, you can still be profitable. You just, you might have to massage like the keywords you're using or, whatever, however you're advertising to make it a profitable ad. But you could do it. I mean, it's not like super hard, maybe take a class or two on running Amazon ads and you got it. But I think that's a pretty strong case. And you can see the numbers. Like, let's say you have a publisher that's kind enough to say, oh yeah, you know what? We are going to run ads for your book. And you're like, cool. Like, oh, how's it doing today? Like, oh, we'll send you a quarterly report.
Yep.
Right. Whereas if you're indie, you can check that thing every day, every hour, if you want to be obsessive, and just like see, hey, I just started this ad. How's it doing today? Oh, okay. Maybe I can tweak that up a couple. I'm going to take it from 35 cents to 37 cents. I'm going to see what that does. Like, oh, I'm going to do, and then you can set like daily, like how much do you want to spend on this ad today? So you can tweak all these little things in just like into this finely tuned ad running. And so I think that's pretty huge on the indie side of things to be able to be profitable, get visibility. So what are you going to do with that, Lindsay? Huh?
I am going to completely agree with you because that's really, really true. And you've also kind of hit on, again, one of those things that bugs me about the traditional industry is the opacity of it, where you can't, as the author, you can't always see into the process. You don't know what's happening in real time. The best that we can hope to do, if, we know there's some kind of sale on Amazon or something like that, or we did a big marketing push, we can look at our ranking for that book, that info is publicly available, or you can see certain things in your Author Central account, which you can have as a traditional author. So you can sometimes have a little bit of insight, but it is nowhere near the kind of tools that an indie author has. It's nowhere near the level of data the publisher has. And I'm a data nerd. And so this is something I geek out about for all of our authors. So I do this on behalf of, I don't know, how many authors do we have at Enclave? Like 60 or something like that.
Hmm.
Where I'm looking at all of our numbers and like, okay, we had this little push that we did over here. We featured this author on Instagram today, or we put their paperbacks in the paperback sale over the summer or something. Like, what are their numbers looking like? Are these marketing efforts that we have, like, are they having an impact? But the authors do not have insight into any of that. And we just don't have the bandwidth as a publisher to be able to have those conversations because, like I said, I mean, we're pretty small with 60 or so authors. I can't think how many. I know we have 100 and something titles, but I just don't have the bandwidth to talk to all of the authors because we've got a bunch of different things happening at all times. So they get their quarterly royalty statements and they can see if there's been a bump over the previous quarter or a bump over the same quarter last year or whatever, but it does not give you the real-time feedback on your marketing efforts, any advertising that you're doing. And so that's very frustrating as an author to not know. A lot of the marketing feels like you are throwing things at the wall, seeing if the spaghetti sticks. And then sometimes you don't even know, well, was it that spaghetti or was it that other handful that I threw the week after? Because you're supposed to be doing different things and trying different stuff all the time.
Right.
So,
So,
yeah.
and that's the other thing too. So, would you say like the quarterly report is pretty typical as far as what the authors get? Like as far as they're knowing what's going on with like bumps and sales or whatever, they really typically they only know once a quarter what's going on.
Yes, quarterly is very standard. I have even seen every 6 months in
Oh my
some
goodness.
traditional contracts, which I don't you can't you can't even do anything really with that data. Like you just get a
Yeah.
really broad overview of like, okay, this is what my book is doing this half of the year. Like it's
Right.
not helpful as an author. So in those cases, I just hope that those publishers are really showing up for their authors on the marketing side and that they're just handling all of it. And that's why
Right.
they report so infrequently. Um, but yeah, quarterly is very standard. And
So here's the
even,
thing about oh
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that there is even a delay sometimes. So, as the publisher, we don't get our payments from certain distributors or retailers until a month or two after. Like, they have to process all their accounting and then they pay us, and then our accountant processes and then pays the author. So, there can be delays, significant delays, even when you're getting the quarterly statement. It might not reflect the campaign that you ran 2 months ago. That might be on your
Yeah.
next quarterly statement. So it's
Yeah, so,
frustrating.
so that yeah, and that's the thing. It's been a while. I've been doing indie so long, I forgot about some of that. So that's the thing too. Like, because I mentioned Amazon ads, how you can see like daily, even hourly results. But even if you're not running ads, let's say you do some sort of promotion. Let's say it's like a social media promotion or who knows what, like let's say you just did a book launch or whatever, and you're really curious, like, oh, how did it do on the first week? And yeah, you could probably, if you have a nice enough publisher, you might be able to call them directly or email them like, hey, how's it doing or whatever. But like, again, on the indie side of things, like you do some promotion or some launch or whatever it is, you can kind of see like right away, like, how am I doing? Like, is this effective? Like
Mhm.
maybe I should tweak it. Like, oh, let me do it a little bit differently this time. This week I'm going to try this ad, or this week I'm going to try this promotion or this social media thing. And you can really get that like real time data on what's happening. That's pretty powerful, right?
It's
From a marketing
very
perspective.
it's very powerful. And in theory, every traditional publisher would have a whole marketing department with multiple staff members, people working in advertising and sales and on the marketing side. And they'd be doing all the A/B testing and the looking at all of
Right.
those analytics. But the reality is that publishing has been hit so hard by the changes that have come to our industry over the last 20 years or so. And they are often running, even the big houses, on really shoestring budgets. And so a
Yeah.
lot of these like in-house roles are eliminated at this point, or they're, it's like a skeleton crew. working in certain departments. It's happened on the editorial side as well, where they're hiring out more freelancers. Like when I was freelancing, I worked freelance jobs for some bigger name houses where it's like their in-house editors, they don't have somebody there, sitting in the office copy editing manuscripts all day. They're hiring that work out because it is more cost effective to do that. And
Right.
sometimes we think that publishers are just sitting on piles of money and that's why they pay authors so little. And that's not the case. A
Right.
lot of publishers are like just trying to keep the lights on and just
Right.
not completely fold in this kind of Amazon era that we're in. It has changed things a lot. So in theory, there should be marketing people doing all of these things indies are able to do for themselves. Publishers should have somebody who is doing that for all of the books, all of the authors. But
Right.
there's also a shelf life on books when you're dealing with a big back catalog and you're dealing with so many different titles and, 20, 50 new releases each month. How, even if you have a full-time dedicated staff, how closely can they look at any one book for any length of time? That's the other
Right.
question. And so there is so much more insight and control and sort of intention that you can put behind it as an indie author. So I agree with you. Point to the indie side.
All right. So to round it out, because I think we've maybe hit a draw at this point. I think again, like we said at the beginning, I think a lot of it comes down to personality, right? So like for me to know those numbers like daily and to get into the, oh yeah, cool, it's doing this and I want to run this ad and I want to do this and to kind of see that interaction, that's exciting for me. And I think it's exciting for a lot of indie authors. But there's some authors that would say like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a nightmare. I don't want to worry about all that stuff. Like I just
Right.
want to go write a book. Like that's why I do this, because I want to write. I don't want to worry about all that marketing stuff. And if I have a publisher that's doing that and they have professionals like in a marketing team, well, in an ideal world anyways, they have a big team or something. But maybe they even have, just like you said, like contract people doing it. They Some people would just want that, and they look at that as a big positive. Yeah, get it off my plate and someone else do it, because I don't want to worry about that piece of the pie. Um, so yeah, personality is a big part of it. So I would say like that's a big indicator on what you want to do, like as an author, like what direction you want to go.
Absolutely. And if you love the idea of being a business owner, essentially, being in business for yourself as a publisher, as well as being the artist who creates the art that you are, putting out there into the world, then indie is probably going to be a really good choice for you. And like I said, I'm a data person. And so I think this is a huge reason why indie does appeal to me. And it's always been on my radar. And I'm like, yeah, hybrid, because I want to kind of structure my career to have the best of both worlds, where I can leverage some of these major benefits of being an indie and be in control of my advertising and those pushes. And that will then support what I'm doing on the trad side and vice versa. So I've got my team over here, working to sell my traditional books. And then I can have kind of that insight and that control over on the other side. And these two things can support each other. So I think that that can work really well for authors as well, who might be like me, where I'm kind of in the middle. I want to have some of that control. I am a business person. I like to be in business for myself. And so indie appeals to me. I also love to have the safety of a traditional platform and the team that is behind that, because it is different than having a team of freelancers working with you. Um, the investment is different, the emotional investment, aside from just the monetary investment, because that's also significant. But like at Enclave, I care about every single book launch. And I know like our marketing director, our executive editor, like we care about every single book that is coming out, every single book in our back catalog. Like these are our books too. And we want them to succeed. We want our authors to do well. We want our titles to do well. So I love having that support as well. That appeals to a different side of my personality. And so, yeah, if you are the type where you really want that kind of publishing family or that community that is invested in all the ways in your book, then traditional might be a good fit for you. And I would also say be really careful about which house you choose to sign with, because they are not all created equal. And
Right.
not every house has that same kind of like, the same level of investment. We'll just put it that way, or that
Right.
same kind of like collaborative, cooperative family type environment. It's not everywhere. So you do need to be savvy as an author and make sure that you're not, again, getting kind of the worst of all worlds where, you know, you're not having to pay any money up front, but you don't have any insight and you don't have a cheerleader for your book and everything is sad and you make, 30 cents a month on your books and everything's terrible. You don't want to end up in that situation.
Right. Yes. No, I get it. I totally get that appeal because it is nice because writing can be a very solitary journey. So it is nice to have people in your corner, you know, cheerleading for you. That is nice. But us indie people look at it that it's just they're just slowing us down. Come on, we want to launch our book now. But
Fair, fair.
But I think that's a good place to end. Good conversation, and I hope that this has proved helpful to those that are considering like which path they want to take, because sometimes it does boil down to personality. But I think the more you learn about both, it gives you a better chance to make an informed decision and something that'll work the best for you as an author. So there you go. And I think any closing words on this segment?
I just think that there is no wrong answer.
Yeah,
That's what I
right.
want to kind of, close with, is that there are just a lot of different paths. And you may have noticed that as Paul and I discuss these different elements of traditional and indie, there are a ton of different indie strategies within kind of the indie umbrella. And there are a ton of different types of traditional houses underneath that umbrella. So there are so many different paths that we as authors have to choose from. And there is not a wrong answer, except maybe vanity publishing. That is probably the wrong answer.
Yes,
Sorry. But there's not a wrong answer. There's just what is right for you and your personality and your goals and your bandwidth and your budget and just all of those things. So that's what we hope to dig into, kind of the nitty gritty of a lot of these different elements of publishing, to maybe help people better answer that question of, am I equipped to select a good editor? And how will I tackle that advertising piece of being an indie author? Like, we are excited to share our wisdom and our experience to help authors who are just diving in to make those decisions wisely.
definitely, definitely, 100% agree. Hey, we found a point of agreement in our verses battle.
Yay. Yeah,
All right,
big
everyone.
adversaries, as you can tell, just fighting constantly.
Constant fights. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Hope you found this helpful, and we will see you next time.